who knows as well about what's going to happen in game 2 of the Suns and Pelicans, the last game and last series on our docket here. Pelicans lose 110-99. The Pelicans in no way deserve to cover that game. Not going to say that.
Yeah.
But yet, a Jonas Valanciunas tap in at the buzzer away from covering the 10.5 point spread. Now, I mean, hey, not going to sit there and be like, oh, that's a horrible beat. That's a bad beat. But I will say I had terrible flashbacks of Jonas on the Raptors when they could never beat LeBron. And he's just missing like tap-ins at the end of that game of game 1 against the Cavs series, the season before Kawhi. Yeah, anyways, story for another day.
Yeah, those tap-ins might have gotten DeRozan traded, to be honest with you.
Definitely, right? And might have got Jonas traded eventually for Marc Gasol as well. So yeah, they don't cover the 10.5 point spread. I think the Pels, a lot of talk again. Is this a schedule loss as the Pels with the quick turnaround against the Suns who are sitting at home chilling? Reality is the Suns are just a much better team. The Suns have a lot of bodies that they can throw up Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. That's going to make life a little difficult here. With the spread in game 2 still being Suns -10, I'm going to be on the Pels. And the reason being is just because I don't think the Pelicans can win. They will probably lose this game and go down 2-0. But I think they have a little more to offer than almost barely covering as they did in game 1. I just think they cover the 10 points. Give me the 10 points in game 2. They still lose, but give me the points. And hey, this season is a dub for the Pels, right? Like getting swept by a team that won 64 games in the regular season. The fact that they weren't going to make the playoffs. They get CJ McCollum. They make a bit of a run. They make the playoffs. Somehow they get to celebrate a little. Zion, we talked about that. Yeah, whatever. Cool. The series is a wrap, but I'll take the 10 points with the Pels in game 2. Hopefully they can keep it a little spicy, as I like to say.
Yeah, another big chain for your guy Zion yesterday. Another big chain. Again, like we talked about the schedule element, right? The schedule loss situation here. And again, you know, we should have somewhere this stuff written down. Again, we hope maybe a listener reminds us a year from now when we look at these play-in tournament games, right? We're going to eventually get enough statistics, enough sort of information with these play-in tournament games to know that, again, it comes super close to not covering. So maybe it's not even a full game type situation, but when the play-in tournament has 2 games on a Friday and those 2 teams, you know, by nature have to go on the road come Sunday, right, with a less than 24-hour turnaround, maybe the first half is the right play. Maybe an alt line first half, right? It's easy to sort of look back on that now and go, man, I wish I had the Suns -10 in the first half at +200 or something along those lines, right? Like that would have been a really great bet. And so whether it is Atlanta not being able to fight back and get back in the game, I don't know that Pelicans are necessarily in this game from a fight back standpoint, but like I am somewhat impressed, right? I have to be more impressed with the Pelicans than I am, to be with Atlanta. And part of that element is like maybe the Pelicans have a couple more weapons than like Atlanta has necessarily, right? And so, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, and if this is more of a, the second game is more like the second half of Pelicans Suns, again, I understand that the Suns are not playing it in the same way. They're not playing the same people in the second half that they would be playing a competitive game in game 2. But yeah, I can totally see. I'd be way more into, I'll put it this way, I'll be way more likely to bet the Pelicans +10 in game 2 than I ever would be Atlanta +7.5, right? And again, part of that is just adding opportunities to win. Like, think about that. I think we were so close to the Pelicans covering that game, right? I mean, just like if you're sitting there with a Suns ticket, -10, it is not even close at any point in time, and you almost lost that ticket. You almost did not get to cash that ticket. And so like that would have been a colossally bad beat, I think, right? Or at least just maybe not in the sort of traditional strictest sense, because you have to play 48 minutes and all of that sort of thing. And we know going in, if you were going to lay 10 points, and really that's the fundamental point, if you're going to lay 10 points, you have to be aware that things are going to get a little dicey for you late in the game. We talked about it with the Bulls and the Bucks on Thursday. We said like the Bucks need to be up 13 points with like 30 seconds to go for you to be, even remotely feeling okay about not losing the bet, because the underdog is going to get the last bucket. This didn't happen. It should have happened for Valanciunas, right? Like they should have had that last basket.
He missed two tap-ins.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like 11 point game should have been a 9-point game and a dribble out right at the end. That's not what happened. So yeah, this line doesn't get changed because unlike Dallas and Utah, and again, we made a good point about Utah, like this is not about Utah. Like we don't like Utah. It's the same thing. All right. These lines are perfect in this way. I didn't think the Utah Dallas one was going to be perfect, but it ended up being. I think that the Pelicans Suns one probably is correct. Right. And so you're just going to have to sweat that last end game stuff. So if you're going to bet this game, then yeah, just understand that you're going to sweat late game nonsense, tomfoolery, and hijinks. For me, that's probably a pass. It's probably the other series that I don't really want much to do on. Maybe if something develops throughout the series where there's a prop angle by the time it tips off, on Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever this game tips off, maybe that's where I'll bet it, right? The same way that the Spencer Dinwiddie thing came in game one. That's what I would look for, right? I would try to evaluate maybe the minutes, obviously, let's put it this way. Maybe if this game is more competitive and it's more competitive from the get-go, maybe there's a minutes increase for a Suns player, right? Like look at it that way, where you go, okay, like X player, call it Chris Paul, right? Maybe Chris Paul is going to have to play a little bit more. So maybe there's an element of, okay, I should probably bet a Chris Paul over, whether that's point total, whether that's whatever, right? Like these are the things that you need to think about when we talk about going from one game to the next.
Yeah. And the reality of that Pelicans game, the Pelicans cover that game easy if Chris Paul doesn't go into point God mode as the Pels were making their run. The Pelicans cut that game to under 10. And then Chris Paul was just like, nah, right? Like whether he's knocking down deep threes or just putting Larry Nance Jr. on skates, like Chris Paul was just like, okay, yeah, I get that this game was kind of close and whatever, but we're done with y'all. Double-digit win, let's go. But yeah, that's the beauty of the NBA playoffs. I feel like, especially in the early rounds, and I mean, not even just the early rounds, you're trying to guess where the blowouts are going to come, because the blowouts do come in these NBA series, and you're just trying to kind of navigate through those. So that's our first kind of full-on wrap-up of the NBA playoffs, going into each and every series, talking about where it was, talking about where it is, where we think it might be, and trying to give you some picks that you can make at the end of it. And, hopefully the run continues. It's tough to navigate these point spreads in between the series as the series go along, but that's the fun of it.